Do you remember the Titan submarine? On June 18th, 2023, it was taking tourists down to see the Titanic on the ocean floor when it imploded. The immense pressure at that depth crushed it in an instant. You might think it's pretty wild to work in depths that, while not as deep as the Titanic, are deep enough to squash you like a bug. But that's exactly what divers in the offshore industry do. When it comes to the offshore oil and gas industry, what we see on the surface, such as drilling rigs, cranes, or storage platforms, is just the tip of the iceberg. Below the surface, there's a wide range of underwater infrastructure, like wellheads, pipelines, and manifolds. These structures need regular inspection, maintenance, and repair, or IMR for short, to keep everything running smoothly and to avoid major offshore disasters like the Deepwater Horizon incident in 2010. For IMR operations, divers are sent down underwater from special ships called diving support vessels. If you're a diver, you'll know about many of the dangers diving at depth. For starters, there's the issue of pressure. The atmospheric pressure above the water surface and the hydrostatic pressure, that's the pressure of all the water above you. At the surface, the total pressure is 1 atmosphere. But as you dive down, the pressure of the water increases. The deeper you go, the more pressure you feel on your body. At around 10 meters deep, you'll feel twice the normal atmospheric pressure at sea level. Because of this, when you dive, you can't just use a long snorkel to breathe air from the surface. The pressure of the water would squash your chest, making it impossible to take a normal breath. Plus, the pressure inside your body's air spaces, like the lungs and the gastrointestinal tract, will be lower than the outside pressure, and that can lead to tissue damage called barotrauma. But if you can adjust the breathing gas pressure to match the water pressure around you, you can safely handle forces tens of times greater than normal and dive to depths of hundreds of meters. So, if you wanted to dive a little deeper, you'd need to use compressed air that matches the water pressure at depth for breathing. This is typically done using SCUBA, short for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. A SCUBA setup includes a tank of compressed air and a pressure regulator, which automatically adjusts the air delivery through the mouthpiece to match the surrounding water pressure. Besides regulating the external force of the water, breathing compressed air comes with another challenge. It increases the amount of gas getting into your body. According to Boyle's law, pressure is inversely proportional to volume. So when the pressure goes up, the gas gets forced into a smaller space, meaning more gas molecules are packed into each breath. When you breathe this compressed air, more gases enter the lungs and dissolve in their bloodstream. The longer you breathe this air, the more gas builds up in your body. When you come back up to the surface, the external pressure drops. This makes the dissolved gases in your blood want to come out all at once, kind of like when you open a bottle of soda. Inside that sealed bottle of soda, carbon dioxide is dissolved in the liquid under high pressure. When you open it, the sudden drop in pressure makes gas bubbles form and escape. The same thing can happen to your blood if you come back up too quickly. Nitrogen bubbles can form in your body's tissues, causing you to feel intense joint pain, dizziness, and fatigue. This condition is called decompression sickness, but it's more commonly known as the bends, and it can be life-threatening. To prevent decompression sickness, any divers watching will know you need to ascend slowly and make planned stops at certain intervals to let the dissolved gases leave your bloodstream gradually. You'll also know to plan your dives ahead of time, figuring out how to safely get rid of the dissolved gases in your blood during ascent, and sticking to that plan. Well, the diving mechanics involved in offshore IMR do pretty much the same thing, but on a whole other level. Before we dive any deeper, literally, let's take a quick breath and talk about something a little closer to home. While you're watching this video, your device is constantly exchanging signals across global servers, and unless you're protected, That data, your location, your searches, even your habits, can be tracked, stored, and sold. That's why we use Cyberghost VPN. And we're not alone. Over 38 million people rely on it worldwide. They've got a fantastic score on Trustpilot with over 20,000 excellent reviews. Cyberghost encrypts your internet traffic and reroutes it through secure servers in over 100 countries. That means your IP address is hidden. Your location remains private, and your digital trail, it's practically invisible. Not even Cyberghost can see what you're doing. And no, incognito mode doesn't cut it. That's just a local disguise. If you like streaming documentaries or exploring overseas content, Cyberghost lets you access Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney+, sports, and more from different regions. It works on up to 7 devices at once, including iOS, Android, and even your smart TV. And right now, they're offering our viewers a deal. Just $2.03 a month with 4 extra months free. And if you change your mind, there's a 45-day money-back guarantee. It's fast, secure, with 24/7 live support. To find out more, check the link in the description. And thank you to Cyberghost for sponsoring this video. Now, back to the depths. It's worth noting that sometimes divers carry out IMR that doesn't require going all the way to depths like the bottom of the seafloor. In these cases, they use a method called commercial air diving. In this method, divers wear a full-face helmet connected to an umbilical cord that supplies them with air, communications, and even hot water for their suits if needed. A dive supervisor monitors everything topside, calculating the diver's depth and bottom time in real time using strict dive tables to avoid decompression sickness. Unlike scuba diving, commercial air diving provides a continuous air supply and tight safety oversight, allowing longer and safer working sessions, typically up to a depth of 50 meters. Depending on the task and the location, the diver may enter the water from a platform, a workboat, or even a dedicated diving support vessel. For deeper, longer, or more complex IMR jobs that may require multiple shifts, that's where commercial air diving stops. If you were a deep-sea SAT diver, the first thing you'd need to do is enter a pressure chamber on the diving support vessel. That's because it's safer to control how your body gets used to the immense pressure of the deep ocean when you're on the support ship, rather than subject you to harder-to-control pressure changes of the ocean at depth. Inside the chamber, the pressure is raised slowly to match the pressure at your target depth. Because of that, and because for most offshore diving jobs, it's not practical for divers to go through pressurization and decompression after every single shift, these chambers aren't just empty rooms, they're a whole living environment. These come with bunks, showers, toilets, and common areas, so you can stay at depth pressure continuously. This method is called saturation diving. It gets its name from the fact that, over time, the diver's blood becomes fully saturated with the gases they breathe in the pressurized environment, and no more gas can dissolve into their body. But because these chambers are kept under constant pressure, you have to be careful. Even something as simple as flushing a toilet has to be done very carefully inside the pressurized chamber. Once, there was a pretty serious incident where a diver accidentally flushed the toilet while still sitting on it. Since the chamber was under high pressure, but the lavatory plumbing system was still at low pressure, the sudden pressure difference caused the diver to get partially sucked into the toilet, with a force strong enough to pull part of his intestines out of his body. Instead of putting a badly injured man through sudden decompression, it was easier and safer for doctors to go into the chamber and perform emergency surgery in the same pressurized conditions. Luckily, the diver survived. Those incidents are in the past now. These days, all toilets in saturation chambers are fitted with interlocks that only allow flushing when the lid is closed, to prevent backflush and make sure no one is seated during flushing. So, if you need to go to the bathroom, you'll first have to let the team of professionals that are monitoring you 24/7 know to make sure it's done safely. You also need to contact them for any supplies. Anything you need will be delivered through a special supply trunk. Supplies are put inside the trunk, the outer hatch is sealed, The trunk is pressurized, and then, and only then, you can open the inner hatch and take what you asked for into the capsule. If you were to open a hatch while the chamber is pressurized, the force can be so violent that it creates an explosion-like effect, which could damage the chamber of the ship. And yep, everyone inside would be in serious trouble. That's why these pressure locks are important. They're not just for the supply trunk, but also for other connection points, like between the diving bell and the living chamber, or between the living chamber and the lifeboat. As we all know, life at sea, even for the normal crew, can be dangerous, which is why ships are fitted with lifeboats for worst-case scenarios. But what if you're living in your pressurized chamber and the worst happens? Well, the good news is that you'll have your own specialized lifeboat. Lifeboats made for divers are called Hyperbaric lifeboats. They look like regular enclosed lifeboats, but they're built to handle loads of pressure. Inside, the pressure is kept the same as in the living chambers. So if there's an emergency, divers can hop into the lifeboat and launch it without stressing about decompression. The lifeboat is then picked up by an emergency response and rescue vessel, or ERRV. Once on board, the divers can start their safe decompression. You won't be spending all your time in the capsule though. Your main work happens in the deep ocean and the seafloor. To get there, you take a sealed personnel transfer capsule, a kind of elevator that goes between the surface and the seabed, also known as a diving bell. The name diving bell comes from an old diving method developed in the 16th century, where a bell-shaped, open-bottomed wooden chamber was used to take divers below the surface. The original ones worked by trapping air inside, kind of like turning a cup upside down and pushing it into the water. Back when SCUBA technology didn't exist, this was the only way to stay underwater for longer periods. But as the deeper the bell goes, the smaller the air volume is inside it. Early diving bells were only practical for shallow dives in lakes, rivers, or close to shore. To fix this, later versions of the diving bell used a system where empty barrels were lowered into the water by suspending weights. The air trapped inside the barrel was then transferred to the bell through hoses. Eventually, mechanical bellows were developed to supply fresh air directly from the surface. Today, they stay fully enclosed and pressurized at all times, connected to the ship by an umbilical, which is a bunch of pipes and cables supplying breathing gas, electrical power, communication links between you and the control room on the ship, and hot water. At these depths, ocean temperatures can drop to 4 to 10 degrees Celsius, or 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So to avoid hypothermia, it's essential that you wear a heated suit that circulates hot water and keeps your body temperature up. Once inside the diving bell, you'll be lowered to the sea floor through an opening in the bottom of the ship, known as the moon pool. This opening is there so that equipment can be deployed directly into the sea from inside the hull. This moon pool is usually near the center of the vessel to minimize the effect of the ship's movements on the capsule. Once at the required depth for your work, you'll be able to leave the bell through a hatch. Since the internal pressure is equal to the surrounding water pressure, water doesn't enter the bell. You'll be attached by your own personal umbilical cable connected to the bell. Usually 3 of you will be working from one bell. 2 head out to do underwater inspections, maintenance and repair tasks, while 1 stays inside to help in case anything goes wrong. The kind of work you'll be asked to do varies, but job 1 might be to perform maintenance on pipelines on the seabed. There are thousands of pipelines on the seafloor which are highly prone to corrosion. You and your team could be sent down to the seabed to find the pipes and repair them. It's a bigger job than just covering them in anti-corrosive paint like you might with an old car. Instead, these pipes are kept in one piece using sacrificial anodes. Sacrificial anodes are metal blocks, usually made of zinc, that corrode instead of the pipeline in a process known as cathodic protection. It works on the same principle as the anodes used on a ship's hull. As mentioned in the previous video about preventing corrosion on ships, zinc has a lower electrochemical potential than steel, so it corrodes or sacrifices itself first, releasing electrons so the steel is protected from corrosion. Over time, the anode material is consumed and its ability to protect diminishes. If the pipeline is still in use when these anodes are depleted, they need to be replaced, and that's where you'd come in. You'd start by cleaning off any marine growth or external coating at the attachment point. Then, you'd weld a new sacrificial anode onto the pipeline. This process has to be repeated every few hundred meters along the entire length of the pipeline. After completing your shift, you'll begin the trip back to the surface. Since the pressure inside the bell stays constant throughout the dive, you can just open the hatch, hop in, and be brought back to the capsule without worrying about decompression sickness. When all your work is done, you'll be able to leave the capsule. But, as I mentioned earlier, after spending hours in a high-pressure environment, you'll have a lot of gas dissolved in your body. You'll have what's called a decompression obligation. So, when the bell gets to the ship, you can't just jump out of the pressure chamber straight away. First, you'll have to spend time decompressing. Literally, over hours, days, even weeks. As you can see, it takes a lot of effort and comes with serious risks to send someone to great depths. Because of those skills and the high risks involved, as a saturation diver you could earn thousands of dollars a day. That's unimaginably higher than any professional working in any maritime or almost any other kind of job. So why doesn't the offshore industry just use remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, like the ones we talked about in previous videos? Well, they actually do. For example, underwater environments often have poor visibility, so divers use helmet-mounted lights, but those aren't always enough. In that situation, an ROV comes in handy. It can shine a bright light right where the diver is working. It can also help by delivering and holding tools, making the diver's job a lot easier. Plus, ROVs can send a live video feed back to the surface team, so they can keep an eye on things and give the diver guidance and support. They can also go much deeper. Even though human divers have hit a record depth of 534 meters and tested pressures that would be like going down 701 meters in simulated environments, sending divers deeper than 300 to 400 meters is considered too risky. In those situations, ROVs take over for inspection, maintenance, and repair work instead of humans. But there are benefits to using human divers. ROVs are often too big to access tight or complicated areas, and their manipulators aren't as precise as human hands. Plus, a human can make quick decisions on the spot. For certain tasks, a diver might actually finish the job faster and more cost-effectively than an ROV. But who knows, one day with further technological advancements, they might not have to risk their lives in the depths anymore. Until then, the offshore industry will keep relying on human divers. So whether you're exploring the deep ocean or just deep into your next binge watch, make sure you're protected online like we are. Check out Cyberghost VPN. It hides your IP, encrypts your data, and even unlocks shows across other regions. It's just $2.03 a month with 4 months free and a 45-day money-back guarantee. The link is down below. A big thank you to our amazing supporters on Patreon. You truly help keep this ship afloat. We hope to see you again real soon.